I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
Okay, hear me out. Have you ever watched a movie and slowly realized the villain wasn't completely wrong?
Clyde, is what you can prove in court.
Hey, I'm Jenny, and today we're counting down 10 movies where the villain was actually right, or at least right enough to make you uncomfortable. These aren't mustache-twirling bad guys. These are characters whose logic makes sense, whose arguments land a little too hard, and whose defeat doesn't feel as satisfying as it should.
An empire toppled by its enemies can rise again, but one which crumbles from within?
Some of them go too far. Some of them choose violence when they shouldn't. But strip away the chaos, and suddenly you're left asking, wait, were they telling the truth the whole time? This is one of those lists that's guaranteed to start arguments in the comments, and honestly, that's the fun part. You're probably going to disagree with me. And that's okay. So let's get into it. Here are 10 movies where the villain wasn't just evil, they were making a point. Let's start the countdown.
Nah, I learned from my enemies. Beat them at their own game. You have become that.
At number 10, we're starting with a villain who shocked a lot of people, because the more he talked, the harder it was to ignore him. Black Panther, 2018. Eric Killmonger isn't driven by greed or power for power's sake. He's driven by history, by abandonment, by the knowledge that Wakanda had the resources to help people who looked like him, and chose not to. His argument is simple, and that's what makes it dangerous. While Wakanda thrived in secrecy, millions suffered under colonialism, violence, and systemic oppression. Killmonger believes that hiding is immoral, and that Wakanda owes the world intervention, even if that intervention is forceful. Now, let's be clear, his methods are brutal. He's angry, vengeful, and willing to burn the world to fix it. That's where he loses the moral high ground. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Everything he says about Wakanda being complicit through silence? He's right. Even T'Challa eventually realizes this. Wakanda does need to change. Borders do need to open. Responsibility can't be ignored anymore. Killmonger wasn't wrong about the problem, he was wrong about the solution. And that's what makes him such a powerful villain. He forces the hero to grow, not by defeating him, but by proving that the old way was broken. For a Marvel movie, that's surprisingly honest, and surprisingly debatable. A strong, thought-provoking way to start this countdown.
It's not what you know, Clyde, it's what you can prove in court.
At number 9, we have a movie that makes a lot of people deeply uncomfortable, because the villain isn't attacking innocent people, he's attacking the system. Law-Abiding Citizen, 2009. Clyde Shelton doesn't snap out of nowhere. He watches his family get murdered, then watches the justice system completely fail him. Deals are made, evidence is ignored, and the men responsible walk away with lighter sentences, all in the name of efficiency. That's the moment the movie asks its real question. What is justice actually for? Clyde's entire philosophy is built on one brutal truth: the system cares more about closing cases than protecting victims. Prosecutors want win records. Judges want speed. And accountability becomes negotiable. So Clyde decides to force the system to feel consequences. Now, yes, his actions are extreme. People die. Lines are crossed. There's no pretending he's a hero. But every person he targets represents institutional failure, not random cruelty. And here's where the debate kicks in. The movie doesn't just show a broken justice system, it shows one that knows it's broken and continues anyway. Clyde becomes the villain simply because he refuses to accept that reality. What makes this so unsettling is that even the characters opposing him start to admit he's right, they just can't allow him to win. Not because he's wrong, but because letting him succeed would expose the entire system. By the end, you're not cheering for order, you're questioning whether order without justice is worth protecting at all. Law-Abiding Citizen doesn't want you to agree with Clyde Shelton. It wants you to admit that if the system worked the way it claims to, he never would have existed. And that's exactly why he earns this spot on the list.
I triggered it 35 minutes ago.
At number 8, we're talking about a villain whose plan is so horrifying that it actually works. Watchmen, 2009. Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, isn't motivated by ego or chaos. He genuinely believes humanity is too divided, too volatile, and too close to wiping itself out. Nuclear war is inevitable. Millions will die no matter what. So he makes a choice no one else is willing to make. Instead of letting the world destroy itself slowly, he forces it to unite instantly, by giving humanity a common enemy. His plan costs millions of lives, but in return, it prevents global annihilation. And here's the uncomfortable part. He's right about the outcome. The world does unite. War stops. Humanity steps back from the brink. Even the heroes realize that exposing the truth would undo the peace and cause even more death. That's why they stay silent. Ozymandias doesn't see himself as a villain, he sees himself as a necessary sacrifice. He gives up his soul so the world can survive, and he does it without hesitation, remorse, or the need for recognition. Is it monstrous? Absolutely. Is it immoral? Without question. But when the alternative is total extinction, the movie forces you to confront a terrifying idea. What if the most ethical choice is the one that feels unforgivable? Watchmen doesn't give you comfort. It leaves you stuck with the consequences, and the haunting realization that the villain didn't fail. He won. And that's exactly why this entry is still debated years later, and why it earns the number 8 spot on this list.
Order. Order is the barrier that holds back the frozen death.
At number 7, we've got a movie where the villain's logic is cold, brutal, and terrifyingly practical. Snowpiercer, 2013. Wilford, the creator of the Snowpiercer train, isn't trying to be loved. He's trying to keep humanity alive. The world outside is frozen, uninhabitable, and dead. The train is the last ecosystem left on Earth, and ecosystems only survive through balance. That's his entire philosophy. Limited resources, limited space, limited lives. So Wilford enforces a rigid class system. The wealthy live comfortably at the front. The poor are packed into the tail. It's horrifying, but in his mind, it's necessary. Too much equality leads to chaos. Too much chaos leads to extinction. And here's where the movie gets uncomfortably honest. Every time the lower class rebels, it's not just a moral issue, it's a logistical threat. Food runs low. Systems destabilize. Order collapses. Wilford isn't maintaining power for luxury, he's maintaining a system that literally cannot support everyone equally. Even the revolutions are part of the design. Uprisings are expected, controlled, used to thin the population when things get out of balance. It's cruel beyond words, but it's also deliberate survival strategy. Does that make him right? Morally, no. But pragmatically? That's where the debate lives. Snowpiercer forces you to confront a bleak question. If humanity can't be saved without cruelty, is survival still worth it? Wilford represents a future where compassion is a liability and leadership means making choices no one wants to make. And what makes him so disturbing is that the movie never fully proves him wrong. It just proves that living under his truth is unbearable. That moral stalemate is exactly why Snowpiercer earns the number 7 spot on this list.
An empire toppled by its enemies can rise again, but one which crumbles from within?
At number 6, we have a villain who never throws a punch, and still completely wins. Captain America, Civil War, 2016. Helmut Zemo isn't trying to conquer the world. He isn't chasing power, money, or recognition. He's chasing accountability. After losing his family to the Avengers' collateral damage, Zemo comes to a brutal conclusion. Unchecked heroes are just another form of uncontrollable weapons. And honestly, he's not wrong. The Avengers operate across borders, answer to no one, and decide for themselves what level of destruction is acceptable. When things go wrong, and they do, there's no real justice, just apologies and cleanup crews. Zemo understands something the heroes don't want to face. Good intentions don't erase consequences. Instead of attacking the Avengers head-on, he exposes the cracks already holding them together. Ego, guilt, secrets, loyalty. He lets them destroy themselves using the truth, not lies. And that's the uncomfortable part. Everything Zemo uses against them is real. No manipulation. No mind control. Just information they were already avoiding. By the end, the Avengers are fractured, global trust is gone, and the world is objectively less safe, not because Zemo lied, but because the heroes refused to take responsibility sooner. Even the film admits it. The Sokovia Accords exist because Zemo's argument makes sense. His methods are cruel. His revenge is personal. But his message is painfully clear. Power without oversight always ends in tragedy. Captain America, Civil War doesn't frame Zemo as a hero, but it absolutely lets him be right. And that quiet, devastating truth is why this entry earns the number 6 spot.
You think I'd let him destroy me and end up happier than ever? No fucking way. He doesn't get to win.
At number 5, we're stepping into deeply uncomfortable territory, because this villain isn't trying to save the world, she's exposing it. Gone Girl, 2014. Amy Dunne is framed as a manipulative sociopath, and to be clear, her actions are extreme, calculated, and absolutely criminal. There's no defending what she does. But what makes Gone Girl so controversial is why she does it. Amy isn't reacting to a single betrayal, she's reacting to years of emotional erasure. To being molded, minimized, and expected to perform a version of herself that keeps a failing marriage alive. Her infamous cool girl monologue isn't just bitterness, it's a brutal critique of expectations placed on women to be endlessly accommodating, desirable, and silent. And here's where the movie gets honest. Nick isn't innocent. He lies. He cheats. He uses Amy's image to appear sympathetic while privately discarding her. The marriage collapses not because Amy is unstable, but because both partners are playing roles instead of telling the truth. Amy simply refuses to lose quietly. Now, her response is monstrous. She doesn't walk away, she punishes. She turns the media, the legal system, and public perception into weapons. And disturbingly, it works. Because those systems are already built to consume narratives, not truth. Gone Girl isn't asking you to support Amy. It's asking you to admit that she understands the game better than anyone else. By the end, she wins, not because she's right morally, but because society rewards the most convincing story. And that's the part that lingers.
This universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist.
At number 4, we have one of the most controversial villains in modern blockbuster history, because the movie does something shocking. Avengers Infinity War, 2018. It lets him win. Thanos isn't driven by hatred, chaos, or domination. He's driven by scarcity. By the belief that the universe is consuming itself faster than it can sustain life, and that without intervention, everything eventually collapses. And here's the uncomfortable truth the film keeps circling back to. No one actually offers a better solution. The heroes want to stop him, but they don't argue against his logic. They argue against his morality. And those are not the same thing. Thanos believes random, impartial loss is the only fair way to restore balance. He doesn't target enemies. He doesn't spare allies. He even sacrifices the person he loves most to prove that this isn't about pleasure or power. That's what makes him so disturbing. If this were about control, he'd rule afterward. If it were about ego, he'd demand recognition. Instead, he destroys the stones and walks away. The snap is horrifying, but it's also quiet. No victory speech. No celebration. Just the consequences of a decision carried out exactly as promised. And the film forces you to sit with one brutal realization. The universe doesn't immediately fall apart. In fact, it stabilizes. Infinity War never tells you Thanos is right, but it refuses to prove him wrong. And that's why the debate never ends. Because if the villain's logic holds, then the heroes are fighting for hope, not answers. Thanos isn't justified. He's not merciful. He's not humane. But he is honest about the problem, and terrifyingly committed to seeing it through. That moral discomfort is exactly why Avengers: Infinity War earns the number 4 spot on this list.
Wanting people to listen, you can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore.
At number 3, we're dealing with one of the most disturbing villains ever put on screen, because his argument is horrifying and uncomfortably precise. 7, 1995. John Doe doesn't see himself as a murderer. He sees himself as a messenger. In his mind, society has become numb to sin, violence, greed, cruelty, apathy, all so normalized that no one reacts anymore. So he decides to do the unthinkable, force people to pay attention. Each crime is symbolic, carefully planned, designed not just to punish individuals, but to indict a culture that looks away unless shock is involved. And as grotesque as his actions are, the movie never pretends his observations are wrong. The city in 7 is decaying. People are cruel, detached, and exhausted. Authority is reactive, not proactive. No one fixes problems, they just manage the aftermath. John Doe simply removes the illusion. Now let's be very clear, nothing he does is justified. His methods are pure evil. Innocent lives are destroyed. Trauma ripples outward endlessly. But here's what makes 7 so unsettling. The film never disproves his worldview. Even the detectives chasing him slowly start to crack under the same moral rot he's describing. By the time the final act arrives, the system has failed, reason has failed, and emotion takes over, exactly as John Doe predicted. The ending isn't just shocking. It's inevitable. John Doe doesn't escape physically, but philosophically, he succeeds. His message spreads. His final act completes the pattern. And the world is left no better, just more aware of how broken it already was. 7 doesn't ask you to agree with the villain. It forces you to admit that he understands humanity far better than anyone wants to. And that terrifying clarity is why this film earns the number 3 spot on this list.
I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
At number 2, we have a villain who doesn't want money, power, or control. He wants the truth. The Dark Knight, 2008. The Joker's entire mission in The Dark Knight is to prove one thing: that morality is fragile, and it only exists when life is comfortable. He doesn't corrupt good people, he removes the safety net and lets them reveal themselves. Every experiment he runs is designed to strip away rules, take away order, introduce fear, and then watch what people do when consequences are real. The fairy dilemma isn't about explosives, it's about whether strangers will choose survival over principle. And here's the part people don't like admitting: the Joker is right about human nature under pressure. Throughout the film, institutions collapse. The police bend rules. Harvey Dent, Gotham's symbol of hope, breaks completely. Even Batman abandons his own code when pushed far enough. The Joker doesn't create the chaos, he exposes it. Now, is he evil? Absolutely. He's cruel, sadistic, and delights in suffering. But his philosophy keeps surviving every attempt to disprove it. Even when the civilians on the ferries refuse to press the button, the victory is fragile, dependent on timing, luck, and hesitation. 1 second later, the outcome could have been very different. And the Joker knows that. That's why his argument lingers. Order isn't permanent. Goodness isn't guaranteed. And heroes aren't incorruptible. By the end of the film, Gotham doesn't win by proving the Joker wrong. It wins by lying to itself, preserving hope through deception. Batman becomes the villain in the public eye so the city can keep believing in goodness. The Joker doesn't win outright, but he isn't defeated either. He proves that chaos is always waiting, and that sometimes, the only thing holding society together is a shared illusion. That deeply uncomfortable truth is why The Dark Knight earns the number 2 spot on this list. And finally, at number 1, we have a villain whose logic is born entirely from experience, and that's what makes him impossible to dismiss. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, 2014. Koba is labeled as the antagonist, the extremist, the warmonger. He's the ape who refuses peace. The one who ruins everything. But here's the truth the movie never lets you forget. Koba remembers what humans did. He was experimented on, tortured, caged, scarred, physically and psychologically. While Caesar believes humans can change, Koba has already seen who they are when they have power. And he's not wrong. Every attempt at peace is fragile. Every truce depends on humans behaving better than they historically ever have. Weapons are rebuilt. Fear spreads. One mistake spirals into violence almost immediately. Koba doesn't believe in hatred for its own sake, he believes in prevention. His worldview is brutally simple. If humans regain control, apes will suffer again. Not might. Will. Caesar hopes for coexistence. Koba prepares for survival. And that's what makes this so tragic. Koba isn't fighting for dominance, he's fighting to make sure what happened to him never happens again. His aggression is rooted in memory, not ambition. Trauma, not ego. Does that excuse what he does? No. Innocents die. Lines are crossed. Peace becomes impossible. But the film never proves his fear wrong. In fact, the entire franchise eventually confirms it: humanity and apes cannot coexist without one side dominating the other. Koba simply sees the ending before anyone else is willing to accept it. That's why this villain hits harder than all the others on this list. Because Koba isn't warning about a hypothetical future, he's reacting to a documented past. And when you really sit with that, his actions stop looking like madness, and start looking like a survival instinct taken too far. That tragic, terrifying honesty is exactly why Dawn of the Planet of the Apes earns the number 1 spot on this list. And if this one didn't make you uncomfortable, you probably weren't paying attention. Alright, so those were 10 movies where the villain wasn't just evil, they were making a point. And whether you agree with them or not, at least a few of these probably made you uncomfortable. The scary part isn't that these villains exist, it's that their arguments almost make sense. They see problems the heroes avoid, say things out loud that everyone else ignores, and force the world to react, even if they go too far doing it. And let's be honest, if the villain makes you stop, think, and argue about it afterward, that's a powerful story. I already know this comment section is going to be divided, so let's do it properly. Which villain do you secretly agree with the most? And which one crossed a line you can't forgive? If you enjoyed hanging out and breaking down movies like this, make sure you're subscribed to Watch with Jenny. This channel is all about thoughtful films, messy morals, and conversations that don't end when the credits roll. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, with more movies that blur the line between right and wrong.